Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are stripping away the modern obsession with, hacks and shortcuts to look at something much more durable.
Hmm.
We're talking about prosperity. And I don't just mean a full bank account, though. Sure, that's part of it. I mean the kind of success that doesn't just collapse the moment the market dips.
It's the universal pursuit, isn't it?
Mm.
But you're absolutely right to distinguish between getting rich and true prosperity. They're not always the same thing.
That's the whole point. If you ask most people how to build that kind of life, you get a lot of cynical answers. You hear that you need to know the right people or be born into it, or, and this is the big one, you have to be willing to play dirty.
The whole nice guys finish last idea.
Exactly. The idea that commerce is a jungle. And to survive, you just have to be ruthless.
But the source we're looking at today,
Right.
well, it calls that complete nonsense.
It really does. We are diving into James Allen's 1911 classic, 8 Pillars of Prosperity. Now, Allen is a giant in the self-help world most people know as a man thinketh. But this book feels different. It's less like a collection of nice quotes and more like a blueprint.
A blueprint is the perfect word for it. Allen was a pioneer of the New Thought movement, but here he's so practical. He starts with a premise that might sound, well, a little radical today.
Which is?
That prosperity is not an accident, it's not luck, it is a mathematical certainty based on moral laws.
Mathematical certainty. That's a bold claim when you're talking about something as messy as a career. We usually think of math as, physics or engineering.
And Allen argues they're one and the same.
Yeah.
Just as a bridge stands because it obeys the laws of physics, a prosperous life stands because it obeys moral laws.
Okay, explain that.
If you build a bridge out of rotten wood, gravity pulls it down. It's inevitable. If you build a business out of rotten character, moral law pulls it down. You can't cheat it.
So no, fake it till you make it.
Absolutely not. In Allen's view, you can't fake the structural integrity of a building. And he uses this one central metaphor throughout the entire book, the Temple of Prosperity. He really wants you to visualize your life as an actual building.
Okay, so let's construct this temple. What are we looking at?
So visualize a grand classical building. Right at the top, you have the roof. The roof is prosperity itself. It's shelter, comfort, happiness. It's what we all want.
But a roof can't just float in midair.
Right. It needs support.
Yeah.
And before anything else, it needs a foundation. And Allen is so adamant that the foundation must be strictly moral. He argues that any business is a building process. You just cannot build a durable stone structure on a swamp of lies or trickery.
You might be able to throw up a tent on a swamp, but not a temple.
Exactly. And connecting that moral foundation to that roof of prosperity are 8 specific pillars.
And that's our roadmap. We are going to take apart these 8 pillars to see what they're made of. Allen splits them into 2 groups, right? The practical cornerstones and then the higher virtues.
Correct. The first 4 are what he calls the corner pillars. In architecture, the corners take the most weight. These are the absolute non-negotiables for any kind of success.
Okay, let's look at that first corner. Pillar 1 is energy.
Energy.
Now, when I read energy, my mind goes straight to modern hustle culture. Caffeine, 4 a.m. wake-up calls, just constant busyness. Is that what Allen is getting at here?
Not quite. He actually makes a very sharp distinction between that kind of busyness and what he calls working power.
Working power.
Yeah. For him, energy is concentrated exertion. It's the ability to focus power effectively. He actually contrasts the energetic man with the lazy man, and his description is, well, it's brutal.
It really is. I wrote this down. He calls the lazy man unemployable and not half alive.
It sounds harsh, but think about the mechanism he's describing. The lazy man is passive. He's waiting for something to happen, waiting for a break, waiting for help. He's sort of dead in the sense that he has no agency.
Whereas the energetic man is a creator.
Yes. He doesn't wait for opportunities. He makes them. And Allen even breaks it down into components. He lists promptitude, vigilance, industry, and earnestness.
Promptitude really stood out to me. We tend to think of punctuality as just being polite, but Allen calls it a tonic.
Think about what doing things now actually does. When you're prompt, you eliminate that mental drag of unfinished business. Procrastination for him is a leak in your energy tank.
A vice fatal to prosperity.
Because it breaks the link between intention and action. If you say you'll do it and then you don't do it immediately, you become unreliable. First to others, and eventually to yourself.
That makes sense. So energy is the engine, but if you have a powerful engine with a hole in the gas tank, you're in trouble. That brings us to pillar 2, economy.
Economy.
And again, here's a word that carries a lot of modern baggage. Economy Usually makes us think of scarcity clipping coupons being cheap.
And Allen deals with that right away. He says that's a really shallow view. For him, economy isn't about saving pennies, it's about the concentration of power.
Concentration of power. Now that sounds much more dynamic.
He sees it as a middle way. On one side, you have waste scattering your resources, your time, your money. On the other side, you have holding on so tight that everything stagnates.
So true economy is the channel right in the middle.
It directs resources where they're needed most. It's about efficiency, but it's also about focus. This is where he brings in the idea of the spiritual economist.
I found this part fascinating. How does economics apply to your spirit?
Well, this is one of the deepest insights in the book, I think. Allen argues we have a finite amount of energy. A spendthrift wastes that energy on anger, anxiety, petty arguments. The spiritual economist, they transmute that raw energy into something valuable.
Transmutes. So instead of yelling at a bad employee, you turn that energy into creating a better training system.
Precisely. You conserve the capital of your character. You eliminate the non-essentials from your life so that every ounce of your vitality goes into building that temple.
That reframing is huge. It's not about restriction. It's about directing fire. Okay, pillar 3. This is the heavy hitter. Integrity.
The central moral pillar.
Allen writes, there is no striking a cheap bargain with prosperity, but I have to play devil's advocate. We look around and we see people striking cheap bargains all the time. The scammer, the fraudster, they seem to be doing okay.
Allen would ask, for how long? He admits that a dishonest person can make a feverish spurt of money. They can sprint ahead for a bit, but we're talking about pillars, structures that have to hold weight for decades. He says that without integrity, the crash is just inevitable.
Why? What's the mechanism there?
It's a chain reaction. Think about how business actually works. Integrity leads to confidence. Confidence leads to trust. Trust builds a reputation. And a solid reputation leads to durable success. The scammer might get the money, but they never get the trust.
So they're always on the run.
Always running, always looking for the next victim. That isn't a temple, that's a chase.
He also uses the word invincibility. That feels like a stretch. Honest people fail in business.
I think he means it in a specific sense. Invincible to fear. If you have nothing to hide, what are you afraid of? Think of the mental energy it takes to maintain a lie. The person of integrity has a simplified mind. They're invincible because no exposure, no truth coming out can actually hurt them. They're solid.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about internal stability, which brings us to the final cornerstone, pillar 4, system.
System, the principle of order. His definition is reduces many to one.
I like that.
If you have 1,000 details swirling in your head, emails, tasks, appointments, you're living in chaos. A system organizes those 1,000 details into one machine. It frees up your mind to do the actual important work.
He says a business without a system is like a body without a skeleton.
It's a grotesque image, but it's accurate. You can have all the flesh and blood, the capital, the energy, but without the skeleton of a system, the whole thing just collapses under its own weight. You can't scale on brute force alone.
He tells that great story about his friend to prove the point.
Oh yes, the business owner who went away for a whole year.
Which, in 1911, meant you were gone. No email, no cell phone.
Completely off the grid. And because he had built such a perfect system, he came back and found every tool, every account, every single person exactly where they should be. The business ran itself. That's the real test of a system, isn't it? Does the machine work when you let go of the handle?
So we have the 4 cornerstones: energy, economy, integrity, and system. But then Allen stops to give this really serious warning about something he calls the weak corner.
This is so important. We tend to think, well, I'm good at 3 out of 4. That's a passing grade. Allen says no. In architecture, if one corner's missing, the whole roof comes down.
So if I have energy, economy, and system, I'm a hard worker, I manage my resources, I'm organized, but I lack integrity.
The temple collapses. And here's the insight. The collapse doesn't happen because of the pillars you have. Your hard work didn't cause the failure. The failure is caused by the lack of that 4th pillar.
Right.
We blame bad luck or the market, but Allen would tell us to inspect our corners. Where's the gap?
It's a holistic thing. You can't negotiate with gravity. Okay, so those are the cornerstones. Now we move into the part where I think some people might, tune out because the language gets a bit more abstract. These are the higher virtues, the central pillars.
And we shouldn't tune out because this is the difference maker. The first 4 bring stability, but these next 4, they bring what he calls greatness. They transform a successful person into a great leader.
So pillar 5 is sympathy.
Sympathy.
Now, in a tough business environment, sympathy sounds like a weakness. It sounds like being a pushover. How is this a pillar of prosperity?
Allen argues it's the exact opposite. He says sympathy, especially when it includes reciprocity, is actually a protective mechanism against selfishness,
Protective how?
because selfishness makes you blind. If you only care about your own profit, you stop understanding your customers. You stop understanding your employees. You lose touch with the very people you depend on. Sympathy allows you to enter the minds of others. And in business, understanding the other person is the ultimate advantage.
He says a sympathetic leader commands more than just labor.
He commands hearts. And that's the difference between a boss and a leader. You can pay for someone's hands, but you have to earn their heart. And a business built by people who love the work, that's infinitely stronger.
That connects right into pillar 6, sincerity.
Sincerity.
We already covered integrity. How is sincerity different?
It's a subtle but really important distinction. Integrity is about your actions. You keep your word, you pay your debts. Sincerity is about your nature. It is the opposite of just appearance.
Oh, it's about not wearing a mask.
Exactly. Allen calls it the standard gold of character. Sincerity means you are the same person in public and in private. It's about simplicity. He argues that people who are constantly managing an image or their PR are wasting incredible amounts of power. Sincerity just casts all that aside.
And from a structural standpoint, why is that a pillar?
Because shams decay. Pretending to be something you're not requires constant maintenance, and eventually, the cracks always show. Sincerity is solid rock. It requires no upkeep. It just is. And that solidity is what attracts long-term prosperity.
Pillar 7, impartiality. This one feels very judicial.
It is. It's the ability to get rid of your own prejudice, to see things as they are, not just as you wish they were.
But isn't passion a good thing in business? We're told to be passionate about our ideas. Impartiality sounds kind of cold.
Passion provides the engine. It's the energy pillar. But impartiality provides the steering wheel. If you are too in love with your own product, you won't see its flaws. If you hold a grudge against a competitor, you'll underestimate them. Prejudice just blinds you to the facts on the ground.
So the impartial person sees the data clearly.
They stand on what Allen calls the firm ground of ripened experience. They don't panic during a downturn or get euphoric during a boom. They just see cause and effect. That's wisdom. And wisdom is a massive competitive advantage.
Finally, pillar 8, the one that sort of caps the whole structure, self-reliance.
Self-reliance. And he gives a direct shout out to Ralph Waldo Emerson here.
Manly dignity is the phrase he uses.
Yes, and he contrasts it with this provocative image of a sucking babe. He's describing a state of dependency. If you are constantly looking to others for support, for validation, for a handout, you are fundamentally weak.
It goes right back to that unemployable man from the beginning.
It does. The self-reliant person is free because they are self-supporting. They know that their prosperity comes from their own labor and their own character, not from someone else's favor. You can't build your own temple if you're just leaning on your neighbor's wall.
So we have the complete structure, the cornerstones: energy, economy, integrity, system.
Yeah.
The central pillars: sympathy, sincerity, impartiality, self-reliance.
And when you lock all 8 of those together, you have the temple.
But Allen closes with a synthesis that I think is maybe the most important part of the entire book. He talks about the wretched rich.
Yes. This is where he totally flips our definition of wealth on its head. He points out that there are people who have the roof. They have the millions of dollars, but they have no pillars supporting it.
And why are they wretched?
Because the roof is heavy. Prosperity brings weight responsibility, fear of loss, public scrutiny. If you have the weight of all that money, but you lack the pillars of integrity or sympathy or self-reliance, what happens?
The roof crushes you.
It destroys you. We see it all the time. Lottery winners whose lives fall apart, corrupt tycoons living in paranoia. Allen says they are encumbered, not prosperous. True wealth, or weal, as he calls it, implies health and soundness.
So the master key he talks about, the secret to all of this, is to prioritize building the structure over getting the result.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
Allen argues that all the details, market prices, trends, business tricks, they're all secondary. The principles are primary. He says if you build the moral capacity, if you build the pillars, the material result follows inevitably. It's cause and effect.
That's such a radical shift. It means you stop chasing the money. You just build the structure that is strong enough to hold the money.
And you trust that the laws of the universe will fill that structure.
Oh,
It's a move away from anxiety and toward certainty.
It's terrifying, but it's also liberating. It takes the focus off all the things we can't control, the economy, trends, and puts it squarely on the one thing we can, our own character.
What kind of person must I become? In the end, that's the only question that really matters.
So I want to leave our listeners with the thought that hit me the hardest when I was reading this. It's a bit of a challenge.
Go for it.
Imagine that today, right now, by some magic, you were given everything you want. The millions, the big company, the fame, the heavy roof of prosperity is just dropped onto your life as it is right now.
Yeah.
Look at your pillars. I mean, really look at them. Your integrity, your system, your sympathy, your self-reliance. Would that roof shelter you? Or would the weight of it crush you flat?
That is the question. Because if the pillars aren't there, the blessing of wealth becomes a curse.
Alan suggests we should spend a lot less time praying for the roof and a lot more time just laying the bricks.
Start with that first brick. Start with energy.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.